Hi, it's Jack Hedges from the Humans Connecting team. Our podcast is all about serving, supporting, challenging, and inspiring you to become a connected human. The content of our podcast is of a general nature, and consuming this content is not the same as seeking individual advice from a connection mentor, a registered mental health professional, or a coach. Conversations about human connection address loneliness. We destigmatize loneliness here at Humans Connecting. We do that by talking about loneliness openly. Loneliness conversations necessarily include a range of topics which at times may be difficult for us to talk about, to hear, and to sit with. If, throughout our conversation, this is true for you, we encourage you to please contact a mental health hotline. The link in the episode description can help you find some immediate support for many places you may be in the world. Our advice to you is this: meet yourself where you are and how you are right now. If you don't feel up to it, we'll be right here ready to be by your side when you are ready. We're glad you're here. Let's jump in.
If you and I were having coffee during a break right now, I'm sure we'd be sharing stories about terrible bosses that we had in our past. Those bosses who were workaholics, micromanagers, indecisive leaders, or bullies. We'd also reminisce, I'm sure, about those great bosses who helped us thrive. But have you ever paused to think about what kind of leader you are for your team? That's a tougher question, right? What if I told you that the quality of your connections with yourself, those most important to you and to your community, influences how you lead at work? Listen up, because if you are a current or an aspiring leader, I've got the perfect guest joining us for this episode. It's time to become a connected human who is then an amazing leader. Hello, it's Phil. Welcome to the Humans Connecting podcast. Once again, welcome to this episode of the Humans Connecting podcast. I'm Phil McAuliffe. I'm a speaker, author, connection mentor, the founder of Humans Connecting, and I'm your host. At Humans Connecting, we destigmatize loneliness and help you improve your social health and the quality of the connection that you feel in life. So if you're here because you've decided that now is the time for change, whether that's been because you've been experiencing loneliness or you're learning about the importance of being socially well on your overall well-being, we are here for you. No matter what you do for a living, how you identify as a human, or wherever you are in the world. All the ways that we support you, your workplaces, and your communities thrive through loneliness are at humansconnecting.org. Before starting this social enterprise, I spent 23 years in the Australian public service, working with both inspiring leaders and some pretty terrible bosses. Some leaders made me want to go the extra mile, valuing my insights and experience, whereas others were empire builders, credit hoggers, blame distributors, and, well, bullies. As I moved up in my career, I was determined that I was going to be a good leader. I read books like Principle-Centered Leadership and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, both by Covey, to guide me. I subscribed to the belief that to be a good leader, I needed to be all things to everybody all the time. But I learned that that is a sure way to be nothing for myself. I now realize that my path to loneliness was shaped by moments when I abandoned myself in pursuit of good leadership. Loneliness is common in leadership, affecting well-being, performance, and social connections. And unfortunately, status and salary offer no exemption to this part of the human condition. Lonely employees, we know, are less productive, they're more absent, and they're more likely to leave. Lonely employees are also more likely to stay present in terms of presenteeism and to be less productive and less efficient. And this costs, like loneliness, costs employers billions annually. And courtesy of our friends at Anossi Behavioral Science Lab, we also know that stress-related absenteeism due to loneliness costs employers in the United States alone around 154 billion US dollars annually. But leaders who feel connected help create thriving, connected workplaces in which everybody can thrive. And joining us today to talk about that is Rachael Cook. Rachael is a highly experienced, award-winning CEO and business owner dedicated to inspiring Australians to prioritise social connection for better health. As CEO of Inclusee, a not-for-profit social prescribing service, Rachael led the organisation to its first ever full capacity and 100% funding agreement performance. Despite managing a remote workforce, her team achieved a 95% approval rating and 98% staff engagement. Rachael has driven major organisational transformations, earning recognition with awards from CEO Magazine, the Australian Financial Review, and the iAwards. Inclusee also received an outstanding culture accreditation from the Leadership Collective. A frequent speaker at events like the Digital Health Festival and Better Boards Conference, Rachael's people first leadership has created such a strong culture that her team annually creates socks with her face on them to thank her for her exceptional leadership. So if you also aspire to get Christmas gifts with your face on them, keep listening because you're about to join us for an amazing conversation in which you'll learn Rachael's technique for unlocking the power of sitting in reflection. You'll want to adapt her approach to knowing your values and then having the courage to live your values. And as always, here at the Humans Connecting podcast, you'll get great advice and support that inspires you to be truly the type of leader who creates an environment in which the humans around you thrive. It's time now for you to be inspired by Rachael. I'll see you on the other side of this conversation to wrap things up. Rachael Cook, welcome to the Humans Connecting podcast.
Thanks so much, Phil. This is absolutely awesome to be with you. I can't wait to see where our conversation goes. We align so heavily on this particular topic. So let's get into it and see where we end up.
So what I can guarantee where we'll end up because I'm like moments away from it already. Before pressing record, viewer and listener, Rachael and I were having a chat and a bit of a catch up, and I'm like this far away. Probably, you can't see this on the podcast, but I'm holding my thumb and forefinger about 2 centimeters apart. Work that out in not metric. You're on your own there, but I'm like that far away from completing your sentences. There is like so much alignment and stuff. I'm just so excited for this conversation.
Yep.
So Rachael, just in case it wasn't clear from your bio, which I read some selections of.
Yep.
Just in case someone doesn't know who you are and who are you and how did you get to be here as a guest on the Humans Connecting podcast?
Ah, good question. So, obviously, Rachael Cook, Chief Executive Officer of Inclusee. Inclusee is a non-for-profit charity, and what I love about the conversation that we're about to have is connection is all we do. So, our mission here at Inclusee is to use the power of connection to reduce social isolation and loneliness for Australians. And we don't do anything else. And I don't want to do anything else because I just think that's just particularly awesome. And we love what we do and we're so passionate about it. I don't know if you can feel the passion through this
You're
conversation already.
melting the internet.
But what we do is just so incredible. And I came on in the organization back in 2019, and the organization looked quite different to what it does today. So our organization actually started back in 1973 with the same type of mission, but what we did back then was look after people in obviously a face-to-face component. And now how we look after people and connect with people is just how you and I are connecting right now, Phil. And we do that all over the place. So it has transformed over a long time. But what that means is that we can connect with more and more people. And that really connects back to our mission. So I joined the organization because I particularly saw the importance of connection through people that were relatives with me. You know, my father was one example of a gentleman who was very, very lonely, but wouldn't want to admit it, would never admit it.
Yeah.
If you asked him, wouldn't want to know about it, didn't connect with many people, but you could see it and you can see it in different ways. And, you know, I just wanted to make a difference. You know, I woke up, I've obviously worked in private industry for most of my career. And I just wanted to make a difference, make a change. You know, I woke up one morning thinking, I am sick of making money for others. I want to use my skills to be able to give back and make a difference. And connection's something I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for following, for waking up that morning and going, you know what? I think it's time for a change.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But have purpose. You know, I
yeah.
I think everybody, and
Yes.
I think that's important even in the topic of connection, is you've got to get up in the morning and feel like you're actually doing something. You know, you feel like you belong somewhere, feeling like you connect with a group or a passion or a purpose. And, you know, what we do here at Inclusive is just absolutely incredible. We have people that give us feedback on the daily that say they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the amazing programs that we have. And when we say here, I really have to emphasize what here means. What here for those people means, they wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for our programs. And my goodness, how often do you get that sort of impact? So when I get to put my feet on the side of the bed every morning, knowing that's the impact that we make, I put my feet on the side of the bed and then I'm run to work because I just am so excited to continue to make that impact for others.
I think there's a gift right there that you've just given us, whether you did it deliberately or not. But viewer and listener, I'm going to imagine that, you're at a point in your career where, you are, in a leadership position. And the swinging your legs out of bed in the morning could actually be really tough to do.
Mhm. Yeah,
And even, you might be living for the weekend and it gets to Saturday morning and even still, it's hard to get into, get out of bed and into your day.
yeah.
I feel Rachel has given us all a gift there in those two wonderful words, passion and purpose. And I'm just going to say it, like those two words get thrown about willy-nilly on LinkedIn, left, right, and center,
Hmm.
to the point sometimes where they actually feel devoid of meaning.
Hmm.
But I want to come back to actually the power of those words and how, when our passions and our purpose align, how powerful, so many P words, how powerful that can be in helping us like roar out of bed, leap into the day with vim, vigor, and vitality, wanting to make a positive contribution
Yeah.
in however that is.
Mm, mm, absolutely. Something I've said as a leader for many, many years that I've always said to anyone that I've ever worked with, if, And actually, I say it's almost what I do as a CEO. So a lot of people say, describe to me what you do as a CEO. And I actually use that as an example. And I say, really, if I had to break it down, it's to get all of my team to put their 2 feet on the side of the bed and for them to be happy to come to work. And obviously, behind the scenes, there's a million things that need to happen in order to make that simple process actually happen.
Yeah.
And I always say to my team, if one day you reach that point and your feet hit the side of the bed and you're not excited to come to work today, don't. So, I'm pretty blunt about that. And, there was a time in my leadership and throughout my career that happened to me one day. And, I will always lead by example. So the minute that moment happened to me, I went, there's that feeling I've been talking about. So I need to do something about this. And the way that I
Yeah.
corrected that was to be able to align to something that I really felt connected to, something that had an impact on me, something that I knew I had to get out of bed for, because me getting out of bed gets other people out of bed. And that just continues to that ripple effect continues across your entire community.
Really, thank you for sharing that. I want to sort of get to that. There was a point that you mentioned, and I'm all about like exploring those points because on that morning when you woke up and you're like, you know what, I'm just not feeling it. This is that feeling that I tell everyone about, that if they experience this, that they need to pay attention to it. If you could like cast yourself back to that morning, and it might be like, see like branded onto your brain and onto your soul kind of thing as like an outlier,
Yeah.
or it might be sort of somewhere in the foggy recesses of your mind. But one of the temptations that I see time and time again in our work here at Humans Connecting, and I see time and time again in myself,
Mm.
is that sometimes it's the hardest thing. Like in leadership, and in the introduction, I said, we can interpret leadership. We can make leadership mean I need to be all things to everybody all of the time.
Hmm.
And when we're all things to everybody, we're nothing to ourselves.
Yeah, totally agree.
And so in like time and time and time and time and time again and
Mm.
time again in my own life, in my own career, when I've, struggled to my previous career, struggled to swing my legs out of bed in the morning, and the feet hit the floor, and I'm like, all right, let's once more with feeling, let's fake it till we make it, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
The temptation and what I relied on was to power on through,
Mm. Hmm.
to ignore and just go, you know what? If I just get to work and go through that meeting and get my first coffee or second or third coffee, in the morning, like that'll be good.
Yeah.
Did you have to resist powering through on that morning when you just like, hang on, this is the situation that I've told other people about?
Mm.
Did you have
Mm.
to like have a long, hard, stern talk to Rachel, or was it a nice, kind, loving talk to Rachel?
I think it was a bit of a mixture, I think. I think at first when you're sort of confronted with that feeling, and especially if I've talked about it for a long time and I can coach others through that, it's not often I've experienced that myself. So, the old, you can give people advice, but you don't take that advice on yourself situation. But I did, I had to really take a moment to really check in with myself to understand, what is this feeling? Is this I'm just having a bad day feeling, or a bad week feeling, or something's happened that's made this occur? Or have I really lost, my passion or connection for what it is that I was doing at that time? And I wanted to ensure that I made the right decision. And also, when you're thinking about when it's linking to your career, so especially when you get into a leadership position, you work so hard to get to that point. So when you get to that point, you go, hang on, something's not fitting anymore, something's not working
Mm.
anymore. What do I do with this? This is what I've worked for. Why am I feeling this way? You don't want to obviously just throw it away immediately. I really had to really think it through and sort of work out what was going on to ensure that I made the right decisions. And so I thought it through very, like long and hard and made sure that I was feeling the right feelings. And the feeling was I wasn't connected to a purpose anymore. And that wasn't motivating me anymore. I wasn't getting the excitement. I wasn't feeling like I was having that impact. I wasn't feeling like I was connecting to the reason, to the purpose that I was there. So
Yeah.
that's when I went, okay, yeah, I can absolutely, with my hand on my heart, know it's time to make a change. And that's where I wanted to come into this sort of space where it had an organization that had purpose. And the minute I saw what Inclusee did, I was connected to it immediately. And this was something that I went, yeah, I can see myself connected to this. I can see why this is important. I want to be part of that. I want to be, how do I make a difference in this space?
Yeah.
And connection, something's just so exciting because it impacts everybody. And I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Sign me up.
Did you see in there, and part of that whole, excitement, did you see in there like you could have a positive impact on the work and the team at Inclusive, and did you feel that it was going to be reciprocated?
Yeah, like I actually probably undermined how much of an impact it would have had. So getting into the organization, as I said, the organization was quite different to when what it is now when I started back in 2019. And at first, like most organizations, a CEO is brought in to make changes, to drive the organization forward and to do all those things. So it was always making sure that we had that vision in place and working towards that. But it wasn't until I sort of got into that and the organization started to evolve that I really actually understood how much impact that this organization has. And starting to get the feedback from the participants and the volunteers and the community that we serve, including our team, that I went, wow, this is way more special than I even possibly understood at that moment. And now, this organization just it's part of who I am. It's part of my heart. In fact, actually, it's part of what I want to leave as a legacy as a person. I want to show people how important human connection is and that we need to make it the priority number one in everything that
Yes.
we do. So one of the big challenges that we have in this in the industry that we work in at the moment, we predominantly work in aged care. And a lot of what we do is funded. But the way that our communities, our department, our government see social connection, they see it as nice to have. And I'm like, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And, I want to see us turn the table around. And, yes, people need their medical health and they need all their, they need all their services to help support them. But I'm a true believer, if we can flip that and put social connection first, all the benefits that would come from that, we can't even measure that impact at the moment. And just people don't quite understand how important it is. So my legacy is somehow throughout this time that I'm working in this space is that we make some sort of a difference in this and that somebody listens and that people start understanding just how important connection is. And it,
Yeah.
it's as important as the air that we breathe.
Yes, yes. And I will just say I so agree with what you're saying. This isn't a nice to have. This isn't something that, we get to do on a rainy Friday afternoon before a long weekend. Like this isn't the thing that, we kind of do when everything else is done and sorted and we get to work on this. We neglect connection at our own peril.
Yep.
And neglecting connection and even neglect to the point where it's not prioritized. Anything less than a priority
Hmm.
is neglect.
Yeah.
Um, and this, we end up, and you've seen it, I've seen it, I've experienced it, viewer, listener, you might be living it as well. We live with the impact day in, day out.
Hmm.
For a lot of our waking hours,
Hmm.
with the struggles that we have. And it really when connect, I'll finish that thought, when connection isn't prioritized, overtly prioritized. And it really does beg a belief with me, Rachel. A couple of things. One is the amount of effort and and money invested, time, effort, and expertise invested in increasing productivity, talking about, employee retention, um, all this kind of stuff, like treating the symptoms when
Mm.
the cause is actually, well, connection or the absence of it.
Yeah.
And investing in connection actually helps it's quite often the symptom is the cause of so many symptoms, and we could play whack-a-mole with the symptoms.
Yeah.
um but yeah, the other thing in that is, um when it comes to connection, and I just wanted to say this, viewer and listener, I don't know if you know this, but here at Humans Connecting, we respond to government on inquiries, and particularly so far in this year, it's 2024 when I'm recording this with Rachel. But we have responded to two parliamentary inquiries here in Australia, one in New South Wales, one in the Australian Capital Territory, which is where Canberra is. And our advice to government at each was to invest not in connection, because connection, like, yep, absolutely invest in connection, but investing in connection is actually quite nebulous. Like, how do you, like, of course, we know it when we feel it, but how do we do it?
Mm.
Invest in belonging.
Yeah.
And we know like the ingredients of belonging. When we feel seen and when we feel heard, we feel that we belong.
Mm.
And when we feel that we belong in our workplaces, we thrive. When we feel that we belong in our communities thrive. When we feel like we belong in our households, when we feel that we belong in ourselves, we thrive. And so that's the term that we focus on, is belong.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the thing. Like, Rachel, you were talking, my approach to this. You were talking about, aligning with the purpose. This is the mission statement and things. Having belonging in there.
Mm.
It's something that we all can really, we know it when we feel it.
Yeah, totally
And we
agree.
certainly know it when we don't feel it.
Absolutely. One of our values here at Inclusee is inclusivity. And I think that's key to everything that we do and connecting to that belonging. So one,
Yeah.
one thing that we do is any of the programs that we do here at Inclusee, in order for people to actually come and join in, which is actually one of our taglines is join in, is all of our programs are created by the people who are in those programs. So we get them to be part of that process and get them to tell us what is it about in our community that they would like to see created, so that each person has their own individual space that they belong to and that they feel like they can connect to. And we do that very much as an organization, even internally with our own teams as well. We create projects and focuses and things that everybody can be a part of that they connect to and belong to. And I totally agree. It's that belonging.
Yeah.
You need to find your own space, your safe space. It's about
Yes.
creating that safe space that you feel like you can be your own true self in however that looks.
Thank you for going. You kind of created the perfect segue unknowingly. You walked into the next question, but just before we move on to the next major question, I want to sort of take us all back to that, to that struggle morning, where, like, things need to change.
Mm.
One of the things that I see, and I dare say the listener and the viewer, I dare say the listener and the viewer is probably aware of this, either acutely or otherwise. It might be sort of in the back of their mind. That debate that we have when we get to that certain age and stage in our careers, we occupy a leadership position, we have those sunk costs. It's like,
Yep.
well, I can't leave now because I've spent the last 15 years getting to this point, and this point is not all it's being sold as.
Yeah.
Um, and we've kind of invested that time and effort, the blood, sweat, and the tears, and things. And we can have this debate, and I'm certainly very aware of it in myself. And Rachel, I'm keen to see if you are aware of it within yourself. That debate between our heads and our hearts, our reason and our intuition.
hmm Yeah.
And there comes a point where I was told
Mhm.
that, you got to do the right thing to the right, like do the right thing, do the right thing. And I could reason 2 + 2 equaling 34. I could make that work in my mind,
Mhm.
but my heart never lies.
Mm. Yeah.
And the heart always wins.
Mm.
Damn it.
I don't know. I think it should. I think the heart
It
should.
does. But the heart tells inconvenient truths at times.
It does. It does keep us in check.
Yeah. Yeah. And it finds a way to win, like by, making us feel bad or actually making us feel really bad.
Yeah.
But it finds a way of getting our attention.
Mhm.
How did you, can you remember the wrestle? Did you
Yeah.
have the wrestle and can you remember it between like intuition? Sorry, intuition, I'm pointing to my heart for those that like listening.
Yeah.
Intuition and reason pointing to my head.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like for me, in that moment, so in that exact moment that I was talking about that morning that I got up, I was in a position where I was a leader of another organization, worked very hard in that organization, grew that organization, achieved many things, but there was some issues in there that, like any organization or career or person may go through. And I had, I suppose, that torn moment of what's going to happen if I leave. You know, Obviously, I think all leaders have that moment, because obviously, if you're a leader, you're there for people. You're there for the people that you work with. I'm a servant leader, so I use the people that I serve, so the people that I'm there for. And I had a moment where I was like, but what's going to happen if I leave? Are they going to be okay? What's that going to look like? What's this going to look like? What's going to happen with that? And I had to sort of check myself for a minute. I'm like, hang on for a second. You back your team 100% all the time. You always say that they know what they're doing, they know what they're going to be okay. Who do you think you are, Rachel, that you think that they're going to be missing you if you leave? you know, they're going to be okay. You know this. And I think we use it as an excuse when we get into a moment like that where we go, oh, hang on, maybe I shouldn't be making this decision. So you start making these excuses in your head going, but are they going to be all right? No, of course they're going to be okay. And
Yeah.
so I had that moment where I just went, oh, should I, shouldn't I, should I? And you ping pong this through your mind constantly. But I have always, there's probably another moment in there where you talk about head and heart, but also the gut. You
Yes.
have that gut feeling in there as well. And I think it always directs you where you're supposed to go. And, in my mind, I was like, why would I leave? You've worked so hard to get here, you've accomplished what you wanted to do, but you can do more. But if you're not going to be happy with what you're doing, that impacts everything in your life. You think about if you're not happy with the role that you're working in, you come home, you're cranky, you take that out on your family, you take it out on the people that you love, you wake up, you're not motivated, you're not going to achieve your best because you're not your best. And I think that's where you've just really got to stop and check and go, regardless of what your head is telling you and thinking where you think you're supposed to be, you've got to be happy with whatever it is that you're doing. Whatever it is that you're doing. And even if that's a moment in your life where you get to the point of the tip of your career, and sometimes you need to take a step backwards. And
Yeah.
we struggle with that. We go, hang on, we're supposed to be always moving forward. Stepping backwards is not in our DNA. But sometimes if you step backwards and you refine yourself, you find that new purpose. Things are not always about what your title is, how much money you make, what your achievements are, how many certifications you have on LinkedIn. It's how happy you are in the life that you're leading, and also bringing that out and bringing that into the people that you're most closest with. And I know that I made the right decision, because the minute I stepped out of that role, my stress levels changed, my demeanor changed. I was happier, I was connecting and with my family a lot better. They saw the real me again, and the minute I could see that in their faces, I knew I made the right decision as well. So, I think it's a really challenging conversation to step back and reflect and look at yourself and go, hang on, I'm not happy. I need to make a change in my life. And that change may not look how you think it's going to look. But, you never know what direction that's going to take you either.
Hmm. This is good. This is good. How are you going, viewer and listener? This is amazing. First of all, Rachel, you just casually dropped so many like wisdom bombs left, right, and center that I was almost going to duck for cover. You that sort of Shakespearean leadership soliloquy has just made editing some of the edits for social media promoting this episode. It's just made it so much easier. It's like right there. And second of all, I just want to a shout out to my partner Jeff, and not that our kids will listen to this, but to them. And when Rachel said yes, I would take it out on my family, and when
Mm,
I made a decision, like there was like the house became a lot more pleasant to live in, and became a much more pleasant person to be around. Just know that I know that you were thinking of that time when I left my career and I was like owing and ahhing and angst ridden and stuff.
yeah.
But Rachel, you in going just back in time just a moment in what you just shared there, you did say taking it out on everybody,
Mm,
and taking it out on those most important to you, taking it out on people at work and all that kind of stuff.
mm,
Did you take it out on yourself?
mm. Yeah, definitely, definitely. You go through, I don't know, it's sort of like the different stages of grief almost. You go through denial and go, no, this is not happening. You're just having a moment. Stop being silly. Get over it. You have those
Over it.
moments.
Mm,
Or you have that, loss, you have that sense of loss as well. So I think that prevents a lot of people making those changes because you are letting go of something, whether it's letting go of something, an idea or an ideal that you think that your life may look like. We're all programmed that, you leave school, you got to go to university, you got to get the job and you get promoted and you do this and you do this and you have all these timelines by these certain ages.
yeah.
If you don't stick to that, you go, what have I done wrong? So you sometimes question yourself and go, what have I missed? Is this my fault?
Yeah.
Have I done something wrong to get here? Or then you have to go through that stage of loss as well. And you have to go through a lot of anger, I think, through that period as well, through that change. So it's a whole mix of emotions. And I did take it out on myself, and I probably didn't realize it. But then you start noticing stuff even physically. You start noticing how stress affects you. In your mind, you start getting headaches. You're not sleeping well. You're not eating well. You start doing all that sort of stuff. So you might not be consciously taking it out of yourself, but you are absolutely. Your whole system is copying all of that all at once. And you know, you've got to not only have, as I said, that reflection to your own self. I use my family as a mirror and go, is this the Rachel that you love and see? Is this who I should be, or am I being myself? And if they turn around and say no, that's when I know I need to make some adjustments.
Viewer and listener, there is something really valuable in Rachel's response to that. And a couple of times in what you've shared, Rachel, I just keep on coming, like, what comes up for me is costs and benefits.
Mm.
And you, in sharing your story there and, the what was going on in your head, and it's like, how will people respond? How will they cope?
Mm.
And then you kind of, gave yourself a bit of a talking to. It's like, oh, come off it, Rachel. Like, really, they're grown adults. Like, it's okay that they miss you,
Yeah.
but they will go on.
Hmm.
And there's a couple of things there in each of these at each of these decision points. at every decision point, really. Please, like, let me know if you can come up with another decision point that this doesn't apply. But we weigh up the pros and the cons. And sometimes the con, in that con column, is what will people think?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and that can be a really tough question to answer because
Mm.
it's so nebulous. It's so because we can make up either we know the person, like
Mm.
that we're essentially, what will mum or dad think?
Mm.
Or what will, best friend think or whatever. But sometimes the people, we completely make them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're nameless. They're like the commentators, as if, our life and times are the subject of everybody's attention,
Mm.
and our career.
Mm-hmm.
Listener and viewer, if you like are at that decision point and in that kind of con column, I'm trying to say it that very clearly and not let the Australian accent sort of go there. But the con column is what will people think? My invitation to you is to get really, really, really bloody specific.
Mm.
Absolutely. Name the people.
Mm.
Name them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you don't know their name, you've got an answer.
Mm.
And if you do know their name, do they matter?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. Because I think a lot of that we use that as an scapegoat for how we're truly feeling. And I'm the first person to say I love a pro and cons list. But what I would also say to anyone that's actually using that to make major decisions, especially major decisions about yourself, is that we will also lie to ourselves in that pro and cons list. We will tell
Mhm.
ourselves all sorts of fibs in that, and that what we're really putting on there is what we want to see on that list, not what's truly under there. So, one thing I've actually done previously that I find is really effective if you actually want to use that technique is you write your own pros and cons list. And then find a couple of people that you feel that you can trust, but that will also be honest, and you give them that list and ask them to add what you're not prepared to put on there. So ask them what you're not seeing or what have you missed, because it's often what others will put on there that you're actually avoiding, that you don't want to see on that list, that actually needs to be on there for you to have a really hard conversation with yourself.
Brilliant advice. And your advice there speaks to what I said before about how I can make two and two equal 34.
Mm.
And reason away to do anything, to justify anything. And that essentially, calls it for what it is. It's,
Mm.
we're bullshitting ourselves.
Yeah.
And it might not be easy to ask other people to help, clear that away, but let them, show up and support you at a time which might not be actually that comfortable for you.
Yeah.
There is no award for doing this the most alone,
Mm.
and navigating life the most alone. And the people who love you want to show that they love you
Yeah.
and to help you navigate life just as you want to help them navigate life as well.
Yeah.
Rachel, I've got so many more questions for you, but I
Mhm.
want to take a really quick break,
Mhm.
and we'll be back with more of those questions in just a moment.
Fabulous.
Hi, it's Nika from the ABSL team. We all know how wonderful it is to work in places with good leaders. Good leaders in workplaces know that fostering a connected workplace is more than just organizing events or sending out emails. It's about creating an environment where every team member feels seen and valued, where every team member feels like they are a part of the team, that they belong. But it can be particularly challenging to create a connected workplace in larger organizations spread across multiple locations. And we're here to help. Our Creating Connected Workplaces service, delivered by Phil McAuliffe of Humans Connecting and Dr. Hans Rocha Iserman of Annecy Behavioral Science Lab, gives leaders throughout your organization the tools they need to succeed. Our advanced measurement methods offer unparalleled accuracy. We help you get the right information and metrics you need to assess the level of social connection within your team. We also inspire your leaders to communicate in the most effective ways with their teams, even with implementing science-backed strategies that enhance social connections. When you're ready to empower your leaders in the workplace and make your organization flourish and thrive, tap the Creating Connected Workplaces link in the show notes and book your initial call with Phil and Hans. And let's create your connected workplace together.
How you going?
Going great. How are you
Yeah.
going?
Good. This is amazing.
Oh, great. Good.
Yeah.
Well,
I was like, this is like, I find such value in going to that decision point
yeah.
because, yeah, like it's in so many conversations and like so many of life's highlight reels
Mm,
that kind of decision point is skated over and we focus on the result.
yeah.
But when we're deciding whether or not we do something with loneliness and feed connection and stuff like that, it's that decision point
Yeah.
from others who have been there
Mm,
and have gone, I don't know what the answer is,
yeah. Yeah.
but I'm going to listen to my gut. I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm going to, come back to my values. And, statements like, if I knew I couldn't get it wrong, what would the decision be?
Yeah. 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 I love that. And I think as long as you follow all those main points, I don't think you do get it wrong. And when you're making these decisions, how do you know you got it wrong anyway? Because obviously you end up in a different path. And it's unless you had two decisions to make, say for example, two different roles that you chose between, you go, okay, I chose this role over this role. What would have that role looked like? We don't often get that insight when we're making these decisions. It's usually we know we need to make a decision, then we follow down another path. We have to trust we've made the right decision. So, and be happy with that decision. And, again, if we're not happy with that, you've got another decision point where you need to make another turn.
The risk of being a bit sneaky, I think what we've just talked about needs to go into the episode. So this was during break time, listener and viewer. But I will just say, I heard something on another podcast a few weeks ago, and I remember I was on a treadmill, like going for a run or something. And in my mind's eye, I'm there right now when I heard the advice. And the advice was, at that time when we've made the decision and we're scared about making the wrong decision and wondering if we've made the right decision, make the decision and make it right.
Yeah. Yep.
And I remember like I had to stop because I was at risk of kind of like being flung off the back of the back of the treadmill.
We've all been there.
Yeah, I know. It's like focus fell, one foot in front of the other. It's early in the morning. Like you can do it. Like, this wisdom has almost bowled you over, but don't make it literally
Yes.
bowling you over. Like, don't make a scene. What will people think?
Yeah.
But yeah, make it right.
Yeah.
And really, in my experience, there are very few decisions in life that we can't walk back.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And I actually use it quite often in part of a reflective process. And I love having these conversations because it is sort of like taking a moment to reflect back and have a bit of a chat about your journey and hope that somebody learns from this.
Yeah.
Somebody learns from your experiences. But in every decision that I've ever made across, my life, my career, depending what it is the decision's about, I really can't think of too many, if any, really, that I've looked back and go, oh, you probably didn't get that one right. I think everything was right for the time that it was. And, I also look back at everything gives me a gift of something that I can take forward. I wouldn't have been able to do this if I hadn't done this. I wouldn't have been able to done this if I hadn't learned that. So I think I look at everything as a gift and everything as an opportunity and everything as a new possibility, and to start getting excited. Once you get through that whole process of going through that decision, that grief, that understanding, that loss, that anger, whatever it is that you're processing at that time, I then go, right, we need to put that away now, and now's time to unpack new possibilities, unpack the excitement, unpack all the good stuff so that you can get that ready to go for the new adventure. Because I'm a person that once I've made that decision, I commit. That's it. I'm in. It's not, I don't fence sit at all. I get through what I need to get through, and then once I've made that decision, that's it. I'm all in. We're doing this.
Such good advice. And viewer and listener, I'm going to ask a question of Rachel now, like using my own experience, but I invite you to really reflect on this because I feel that this could be really helpful for you. And that is, how do you let go of the what should have beens and letting go of the expectations? And the big one for me consistently, which is a real struggle as a social entrepreneur, daily struggle for me as a social entrepreneur, how to let go of control and allow what is and what is coming to be.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm probably a little bit similar, Phil. Like I've read so much about what you've written, particularly about control and what that journey has looked like for you. And I'm probably a bit similar in regards to I've always had to know what's going on. I've always had to, be part of that somehow or sculpt that somehow. And, something I have taken a long time to let go of and actually be comfortable with things just being as they are. And I think there's some beauty in that actually. And just exploring what that may look like and allowing life to take you in wonderful journeys that you would have closed off previously had you had that control, had you done it the way that you wanted to do it. And so I look back, and it's actually a conversation I quite often have with one of my good friends. We might have a wine or two, and the conversation of regret comes up. And one thing I really admire about this friend is that she will blanketly say, I have not one regret in my life, not one. It doesn't matter what mistake, no matter what I've done, I have no regrets. And you know what? I've had some really interesting conversations around that because I went, wow, what would that feel like to have no regrets? I'm like, not one any, because I look back and I'm like, okay, well, if I look back on things that I did, if I had my time again, would I do them differently? Yeah. But then what does that mean to actually just then sort of sit in that for a while and go, you know what? I can't change that. That's happened. I can't go past that. I can't change that decision. That thing's happened. I've got to let go of that, because if the past keeps holding us back, how do we continue to move forward? And I went, what a freeing thing to be part of, to sit there and go, I have no regrets, that you can just let go of that and feel that weight of that world lift off your shoulders. I thought, what an incredible thing to be part of. And at first I didn't quite understand it and I didn't quite align to it, but now it's where I want to get to. I want to get to that feeling that one day that I can turn around and go, I have no regrets. And I think I'm getting better at that, but it's taking time. You've just got to slowly let go, and realize that you cannot change the past. You can only change what is happening. You can only change what your decisions are now. And I think when it comes to decisions and things that we do in life, we make the best decisions for ourselves with the information that we have at the time. And we can't do any better than that. So I think we need to cut ourselves some slack and stop being so hard on ourselves and let go a little and enjoy the ride.
You first and tell me how. But it is that for me, the way that I'm coming at it, and I don't know if I shared it in that blog post where when I wrote about what I'm learning in about letting go, but trust, trusting in myself, trusting my heart, my gut, even when it makes the brain scared. and the brain wants safety and security,
Mm.
and certainty, and trusting my team. And really, it's to sound, hippy dippy and esoteric potentially, but trusting the universe
Mm.
that what's happening is like going to happen.
Mm.
And there are some days where it's way easier than others. And sometimes, like when it's all going well, I'm like, oh, I can trust.
I've got all the
Like,
time.
oh, I'm like Oprah, you get trust, you get my trust, everyone gets trust. Um, but when it's not, when it feels tough, when it feels like an uphill day on that Sisyphean, task of, constantly rolling that big bloody boulder uphill.
Mm.
Yeah, like if you were to go, Phil, you just need to trust. And I'm like, I know, but how? Like, can we
Yeah.
please make it easy? That would be
Yeah.
great. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the thing,
so
it's
that's why
not
I'm
easy,
saying,
is it?
I don't, well, that's why I'm like, you go first.
No, it's not easy. I think, you can only just learn from what you go through. And for me,
Yeah.
as I said, it's been very rarely that I've ever looked back and went, I probably didn't get it right then. And, there might be parts of something that I've done that I didn't get right, but overall, I've always continued to head in a direction that I'm happy with and that I'm proud to be part of. And if I look back on my life, everything was a stepping stone of some sort. Even the really difficult ones were a stepping stone. So I think I just got to take, you know, a moment to sort of trust in, I think trusting yourself is the big part there. Is
Yeah.
trust that you're gonna work it out, that you're gonna end up where you need to be, because we are designed to protect ourselves and to look after ourselves and make sure that we're safe. That's how we're designed as human beings. That's how we got out of the cave many years ago. So so we obviously adapted to do this. So I always just go, I'm going to get it right. I have a great network. I know that I've got people that I can also trust, that I can sort of bounce that off and get an idea about. And even sometimes when you bounce the idea and they go, oh no, that's crazy, don't do that, you know, sometimes be a little crazy and go out there, because you'll be okay. I think that's what we always got to remember, is we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I get that advice, you're crazy, I'm like, right.
That's the one
Right.
to do.
Yeah, I'm just like, right, I'm like, watch this.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. Maybe that's what
so
you need, Phil. You just need that sort of, that sort of advice that you go, all right, now I just want to prove you wrong. Watch me do this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And can I just say, listener and viewer, as Humans Connecting is a social enterprise. Not very many social enterprises work on this. And like day in, day out, it feels like hacking away at the jungle. And that's really kind of the best description that I can cover, that I'm creating our own path.
Yeah,
Because if it's easy, someone else has led the way.
yeah, yeah.
But then I get to look behind us of what we're creating and how, like, the impact that we've had, and and to then see people come behind us,
Mhm.
like that's great. And then I'm like, okay, like you go off in that direction. You go like, and go in your direction, but knowing that we're coming from the same place. I think that's really important. Anyway, I digress.
No, well, actually, you said something there that I love there. That's something about anything that is important or worth it or valued is not easy. And that's something
No.
that I've grown up with my entire life, because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And where you find the beauty, where you find that purpose, you find that passion, is in the place where it's really difficult to get to. So I think if you know it's hard and you're feeling it's hard, you're probably on the right path.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's a terrible metric of success. But
You're doing it
but I
tough,
also
you're doing it
think,
all right.
well, yeah, but also, and which goes to the point, which the question I want to ask, and I'm trying to phrase this in a way, because before we press record, you said you were asked this question, or a variation of this question, almost every time you're interviewed.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to really come up with a hot new take and a new perspective. So we'll just see where we go.
Okay.
But how do you, as you're hacking away
Hmm.
at the jungle ahead of you, And, how do you make sure, to quote Stephen Covey, that
Mhm.
you're sharpening the saw? How do you
Mm.
make sure that you are being you
Yeah.
as you do things, that you be you, you are you as
Mm.
you're doing?
Mm. Mhm.
How do you, and the question is, how do you stay connected to yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Something that I do as a bit of a practice all the time. One of the things I do love to do is reflect. So I constantly reflect on, whether it was a meaningful conversation, whether it was an important event, whether it was my day, my week. I do spend a lot of time sitting in the reflect space and really checking in with myself in regards to how did that conversation go? How did I handle that? What would I have done differently? And if I was to not be here tonight, would I be happy with the life that I lived, even if it was today? And I constantly check in and, make sure that I'm having those checks and balances with myself regularly. And that comes back to, am I living and breathing my values? So that's something I'm very values based. I'm a very values based leader as well. And any decision I make or any conversation that I make or anything action that I do, I have to ensure that my values are connected to that. And if I have stepped outside of that, that is where I really take some time to sort of work on myself to ensure that I don't go outside that circle again. Because I know when I don't live and breathe my values, that's when I feel the most disconnected to myself. I've got to constantly be in that inner circle. So reflection and making sure that I'm checking that off and making sure that they're connected in everything that I do is really, really critical. But I
You
also
journal?
I do, but not all the time. I probably do when I need to get something out of my mind. So I'm sort of a person, like if I wake up in the middle of the night, and I know we talked about before we started recording about how important sleep is, So I do a lot of things to ensure that physically and mentally I'm always at my best, because especially being a leader, I need to be at my best to be able to help others. So I find when I wake up in the middle of the night, my mind is racing. That's when I love to journal, because I need to get all of my thoughts and feelings that I'm, tackling with, and that's what's keeping me awake, out of my head and into the piece of paper. And then I like to sit on that for a little bit. So then looking at that for the next 24 hours, 48 hours, and actually reflecting on, how did I feel in that moment? And then coming back to it again the next day and go, how do I feel about it now? And then coming back to maybe, later on in the week and go, okay, how do I feel now that's passed? And actually use that as a bit of a reflective process. So I journal, but not so much more to document, but more to actually, as a check and measure
Process?
for yeah,
Yeah.
and process of what I've actually done. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
really, really important.
To me, there's a couple of things, and there was a cartoon like when I was at university in the 90s, but like the whales of worry at 3 a.m. turn into
Yeah.
sardines on toast,
Yes, that
on your
is so
toast the next
true.
morning.
That is
Um,
so true. I haven't heard
yeah,
that before.
yeah, feel free to use it. Like,
Yeah.
listener, viewer, that's your gift too. Like, add that to the pile of wisdom that you're taking away from this episode. But
Yeah.
yeah, and oftentimes, 3 a.m. brain
Mm.
is rarely our best self.
No, it's not.
3 a.m. brain is our fears, running amok
Yeah.
with very few checks and balances, which
Mm.
serves a purpose, but
Mm.
also it is like the way that you described there, to process it, to write it down, to get it out of your head,
Hmm.
and then kind of stow it away
Mm.
for a couple of days, and let your subconscious sort of sit on it and
Hmm.
whir away in the background kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good technique.
Yeah.
So I interrupted. The question that I wanted to ask there was like, what else does that, sitting in that reflective space look like?
Hmm.
If it's not sort of like, the journaling, in
Hmm.
that kind of, dear diary kind of way.
Yeah, well, for me, like, and it's quite a unique process of what we do here at Inclusive because we work completely remote. So there's a whole heap of challenges of working like that in that space, and I actually make sure that it is part of my time. So even when it comes down connection, every effort that I make is purposeful. And I make sure I carve out that time because, everybody goes, I don't have time for everything. And I'm like, yes, you do. You just obviously haven't made it a priority to make it time. So in that reflective process, I make sure at the end of my day, even though I work remotely and I work from home, that I actually carve out part of my space to actually have reflective time and sit there and I do it as a sort of a virtual commute, if you want to say that. So one of the things that I missed from working in office to working from home is often just, shutting off everything that's happened during that day and reevaluating what that looks like in the car drive home. So I always used to be, try to be my best to try and leave anything that's happened in the car or at work before I open that door and said hello to my family. So I do that now in a virtual commute, and I can do it. Make sure I carve it off in the afternoon. I might go out outside. I live on the banks of the Brisbane River, so I've got something beautiful to look at. And I'll just sit there and look at the river for a while and just process on that and not think about anything else and just have that, private time where it's just you and your own thoughts. And a lot of people don't like sitting in that space. Sometimes they
I
don't want to
know.
listen to their own thoughts. So it's the conversation people most avoid. So, but I actually make time for it and actually sit in that and ask those difficult conversations so that once I've gone through that process, I can come back and then I can be with my family and I feel like I'm happy with who I am and what I've done and what I've achieved. And that's a good place to sit in. And if I haven't been happy with that, then I've at least I can start carving out a plan and go, okay, right, what do I need to do to improve on that? So that's where a lot of my lessons for my own purpose come from.
Yeah. There's a real nugget of wisdom there, viewer and listener. And if you're not in a practice of getting quiet for a period of time in the day, as Rachel said, that can be a big, scary challenge. Something so simple as 15 minutes of doing nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No scrolling, no cleaning, no doing the washing, no catching up on stuff, no anything, no driving, just sitting down and and doing nothing. I'll add, um, there's you don't know this yet, Rachel, but in an earlier episode of this season, talking to Dr. Nokez Opachin from RMIT University, talking about nature-based therapy. Viewer and listener, he shared that he goes onto his balcony
Mm.
and watches the tree on the nature strip, and the comings and goings of the birds and all of that kind of stuff. And that's his moment of like coming back to himself, using nature as it's available to him, to come back. Another theme there, Rachel, I mean, there's trees around the Brisbane River,
Mm.
but the flowing river
Mm.
also is like, something that, that you could stare into the middle distance at, you can look at without really looking at it. And, it's something that can help you, kind of not get lost in your thoughts, but actually recognize what's going on and and things. And viewer and listener, I hated this challenge. I struggle with it at times.
Mm-hmm.
Hated it. Found 20 different ways that it wasn't going to work, but I gave it a go.
Yeah.
And I still remember I was on posting in Seoul,
Mm.
and Mike Campbell, who is also going to be on an episode, or already has been on an episode of it, season 3. He challenged me, Phil, you've got to get quiet, do nothing.
Mm.
I'm like, Mike, can't. I'm a big deal. I've got this, like so many things at work, like the entire relationship between Australia and South Korea rests on me. The entire relationship between Australia and Japan rests on me. Of course it didn't. Like it didn't, but it was a story I'd, hyped up my own importance. And he's like, you got to go find somewhere to get quiet. I'm like, Mike, Seoul is a city of 26 million people. Please, please find me somewhere quiet in all of that. Please do. Can't do it. Impossible. There's never something like quiet enough.
Yep.
And he's just like, I'll just, end that. So that lunchtime, I went for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out, like 3 blocks away from the office was this beautiful park
Mm.
that I hadn't discovered before. That was, you could still hear traffic and stuff, but it wasn't like 26 million of my closest friends hanging out in that park.
Yep. Yeah.
Did that by the second day. Things that I had wanted to busy myself to avoid
Mm.
came to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kind of life hasn't been the same.
Mm. Mm. That's great that you found that, Phil, because I think you got to find what works for you. And I love
Yeah.
that you said you hated it. I don't know if
Oh,
anyone's
hated.
seen, I don't know if anyone's seen, I think it's the second Thor movie, and there's a line in the Thor movie where they said, "Why don't you meditate?" And he goes, "That just makes me angrier." And when
That
I
is not as helpful as you think.
when I saw that, I had a giggle because meditation as such doesn't work for me. You've got to find, and I think, the lesson in that is to keep trying and keep trying different things to find whatever your moment is to sit in that quiet. Like I would go to all sorts of things. I'd go get a massage, or I'd go do a flow tank, or all these things, and I just go, I can't be left in the quiet because my mind won't shut off. But I found that if I'm looking at something, and as you said, Phil, for me, it's the river, it's the flowing of the river. You can watch you can watch the water go down, or you can watch a boat gently, go past. And I found that movement and just having something to focus my eyes on actually helped focus my brain. Because if I shut my eyes and I sit there in the quiet and try and focus, I just cannot turn it off. So I need something to sort of distract me to be able to get that thought process happening. And that's what works for me. So don't give up is the lesson there. Keep trying anything and everything till you find your moment where you can sit in that space. Because
Yeah.
that's the hardest space that you need to sit in sometimes.
It's the persist. Yeah. What have been, Rachel, have you got a story that you're comfortable in sharing? And even if you're uncomfortable, I'm okay with that. But
Let's get uncomfortable.
but like it didn't go well,
Mhm.
and you found yourself as a result possibly feeling disconnected from yourself, or those most important to you, or
Mm.
your community. So whether that's at work, or where you
Mhm.
live, or whatever.
Yep.
What's been a miss
Mhm.
out of the hits and misses?
Mm. The biggest miss in the situation that you're talking about, and I can absolutely take myself back to a situation that was quite stressful in my career. So lots of challenges that were happening in this previous role, and a lot of stress that was happening. And it was actually, I would probably actually say hands down, it's the most stressed I've ever experienced in my life, and it was all because of my job. And that's really challenging. That's something that my family, again, looking in that mirror of my family, where, your family members are sitting there looking at you worried sick, going like, what are you doing to yourself? And you hear this advice, it's only a job, so why don't you walk away from it? And my response constantly was, it's just not that easy. It's just not that easy. And from the outside looking in, they're tearing their hair out going, why is it not that easy? And so I remember it being the most stressed I've ever been. I remember being awake at sort of like 1 a.m. at night, pacing the lounge room, in tears. and my husband coming out to me, actually at first he was probably a bit cranky, like, what are you doing? Like, go back to bed. Like, this
Don't
is
you know
not
what time it is? You're keeping me awake.
yeah, but then him to see just absolute pure distress on my face.
Mm.
And I had that moment where I absolutely said out loud, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the answer is to this. I don't know how to fix this. And it wasn't a situation where I caused an error, but it impacted what I did. I was responsible for the organization. So anything that happened in that organization was my responsibility. And
Yeah.
I took that really, really seriously. And I took that on board so much that, it felt like I just had this the heaviest weight that I was lifting, trying to carry around, and I just couldn't do it. And I couldn't see the forest from the trees. I couldn't see an answer through it. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that moment is really, really challenging because, I think especially when you get to certain positions, especially as a CEO,
Mm.
you're expected to know all the answers. You're the one that fixes everything. Don't you know everything? Aren't you the smartest person here? And that's just not the truth. That's just not the truth at all. And I think it's a moment where, as a leader, I actually learned to be really, really vulnerable and find some beauty in being vulnerable in that space. And now one of the things I've probably taken from that is I absolutely will never ever portray that I'm the smartest person in the room. In fact, I hope I'm not. I want to have the best people around me. My strength is actually finding other people that know the answers, but me to bring them all together. So yeah, in that moment, it was possibly one of the most challenging moments I've ever had in my career. And not somewhere that I'd ever want to be back again, but where I got a miss, where I got it wrong was it was I didn't look after myself. I just completely ignored everything that was happening physically and mentally to me to protect everybody else. And I think that's what can often happen as leaders because, it's sort of like we're like a parent in some ways. It's like, well,
Yeah.
we've got to protect the family, we've got to protect the children, and we will suffer, and it doesn't matter what happens to us in order to do that. And I will say I'll never do that again. I'll never ever put myself in a position where I'm not looking after myself in that way again. I think that had such an impact on me, both mentally and physically, that it took me such a long time to come back from in so many
Mm.
different ways. You lose a lot of confidence in yourself, you lose faith in yourself, you lose the ability that you just think that you go, that's it, I can't do this anymore. And to come back from that took me a long time. Took me a long time to actually go, hang on, no, you can do this. This was just a moment in time. This is something a challenge you had to get through, but you're going to be better for it because you got through it. And now I look at it as if I can deal with that, and whilst I never want to be back in that position again, if I can deal with that, everything else is going to be a lot easier. Because
Yeah.
I know what to look for now. I know to understand cues and to go, hang on, I'm feeling, people talk about burnout. I've
Yeah.
been there probably twice in my career now. I would never get anywhere near burnout now because I know exactly what to look for. So you start looking for those cues and go, hang on, something's not right here. I need to put measures in place. Don't get to the burnout stage. Get to, I actually say to my team members, if how are you feeling from a 1 to a 10, don't ever get to the 10. You need to start putting things in place at a 7.
Yep.
So yeah, my misses were not recognizing what that meant to me, going through that and I've just thrown away how I was or how I felt for everybody else. And I think you can't do that to yourself. You can't lose yourself in order to protect others. And I definitely lost myself and lost my way through that.
That is outstanding advice because it goes right to the heart of, when we show up to be all things to everybody all of the time, we can become nothing for ourselves.
Mhm.
And when we're nothing for ourselves, everyone and everything, including ourselves, suffers.
Mm, mhm. Yeah. And
And
speaking of
yet,
loneliness,
Yeah.
It was the most lonely moment of, I would say, of my life, because my family, whilst they were beautiful, they were the most biggest support ever, they could see how much it was hurting me, but they didn't quite understand what I was going through because they weren't in it.
Yeah.
And the people that I work for, again, when you're a leader, a lot of the decisions that you make or the things that you have to be part of, a lot of them have to be confidential. So you're
Yes. Yes.
sharing a lot of a weight, a lot of the problems that you can't discuss because of confidentiality with anybody else. And then even the people that you work for, they don't understand the things that you're going through either, because it's just a different role, it's a different position. You've got different things that you need to be responsible for. So there's so much in saying that when you get to a leader, you can really feel that loneliness because nobody
Hmm.
really understands what you're experiencing. And in that moment, there was one person that was actually one of my executive mentors that I could actually openly talk about what I was going through. That was probably the only person that quite understood. But again, they're not going through it. So you just feel like you're in this position, you're at the top of the organization and you're suffering. And it is one of the most loneliest places to be in.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really do think, listener and viewer, you are in that right now. Either like you're in your own version of this right now, or in listening to Rachel in the same way that I have been, you know, back into a miss, in your past, and you can really, it really hits, it really lands that the loneliness of leadership,
Mm,
surrounded by people, but and everyone's looking to you to have the answer.
mm, mhm,
You're looking to you to have the answer. You're, getting cranky with yourself because you can't be all things to everybody. You're not the person with the right answer at the right time and in the right way, all that kind of stuff.
mhm.
How horribly lonely it is. But listener and viewer, did you hear how Rachel sort of navigated a way out? She spoke to someone.
Mm,
They weren't intimately involved, but they understood.
mm. Yeah.
And that's key.
100%. Absolutely. And I would advise anyone that is working in a leadership position, go find yourself an executive mentor or somebody that's a really trusted advisor that you can download some of this onto. Because if you don't get it out, you will suffer in some way or another. And you do feel like you're on your own. So you need to make an effort to find that support mechanism in order that you can connect to be able to get through this, because you can't do it on your own. You cannot do this on your own. And I think leaders think that they can do everything. You can't. You're not a superhero. You're just a human and we
Yeah.
function like this. So we need to do human things, and that's to go connect with someone. And I tell you what, if I didn't have that executive mentor in place, somebody that I could talk to, I dread to think what that situation would have taken me through. Having that support, having somebody is absolutely critical to navigate this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Have you ever been with someone, perhaps it's been with your partner, or maybe while you're at work or out with a group of friends, and despite having people around you, you just feel disconnected? And this is an incredibly common experience, one that I've certainly had many times. And when these things happen, we often don't really know what to do about it. Or worse, we think there might be something wrong with us for having that experience in the first place. Hi, this is Pete from the Humans Connecting team. And if you've experienced what I'm talking about, then you might find our Connection Starter course really helpful. See, these feelings, they're all just expressions of loneliness. And before I did the course, I didn't even realise I was lonely. And I certainly didn't see these feelings as an invitation to discover how I could become more connected to myself, more connected to my people, and more connected to the things that I'm most passionate about in my life. Now, the course itself, it's made up of a series of self-led videos, a comprehensive workbook, and a handful of external resources, all lovingly led and supported by Phil and the team here at Humans Connecting. By the end of it, you'll have your very own personalised connection plan that is specifically tailored to you and your unique connection needs. Look, it's made a huge impact on my life, so if you're curious about improving the connections in yours, jump over to humansconnecting.org and under the products menu, click on the Connection Starter course because you are absolutely worthy of it.
So, Rachel, what's one piece of advice you can give to the viewer and listener who is in the midst of a loneliness experience right now?
Okay. Like for me, when it comes to loneliness, it comes to making an effort. I know this is really hard to hear this, but I have to make an effort. I make sure I make it a priority. So I'll give you an example. My husband and my family, we went on a beautiful holiday to Singapore in May of this year, but we had not been on a holiday for 3.5 years. And we have no one else to blame but ourselves because we just didn't book it in. And I think, look how quickly 2024 goes by. Time is just flying by so quickly. So for me, I make sure I make things a priority. So when we finished our holiday in Singapore, actually it was partway through the holiday in Singapore, I turned around to my husband. I said, "You know what? This is awesome. How lovely has this holiday been?" And we need to ensure that we book it in and make this more regular. And we want to do this at least once a year because what happens, life gets in the way. And before we know it, 3.5 years has passed. So I said, the first thing we need to do as soon as we get home from this holiday is book in the next holiday. And then make sure that we've got that booked in. It's something for us to look forward to. It's something for us to work towards, research, be part of, and get excited for. And I think connection really works in some similar ways as well. So something I do is when I connect with my family or connect with my friends, whenever it is that I do it, I actually try and make sure I make an effort with saying, okay, let's book in our next event or our next catch up. Let's do it now. Because if you don't do it now and you don't lock that away in your calendar, before you know it, you haven't seen that friend for 6 months or for 12 months. It just goes so quickly. So my advice around that is something that works for me is book it and then book your next one. Make it like as regular as like your hair appointment. Your hairdresser wouldn't let you walk out the door without making your next hair appointment. Why are we walking out the door of our friends and family's houses without making our next appointment with them as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's for me, that has been something that's been really important to make sure that I frequently are booking in that connection with whoever it is that's important to me. Or, it might be even an activity that's really important to me. I'm making sure that I'm putting that in and making that a priority. And because I find that if I don't do that, we fill it in with things that aren't as important. So I loved your article the other day about social media. And look, I totally agree. I personally am not on social media. I have LinkedIn for work purposes, but I'm not on social media purposely because I don't feel connection through that way. But I find that if I don't book in those things, I'm just doing stuff that's a bit meaningless. So I want to make sure I make that a priority.
It's fantastic advice. Book it.
Book it. Yeah.
Yep. Book it and then critically do it.
Yeah.
Treat it
Yeah.
as the important appointment that it is. Because it is a very important appointment. And there will always be at times, like closer to the time, there's always going to be something that's like, oh, I can't meet up. I can't go for the coffee. I can't go for the walk. I can't go to the movie. I can't do the thing
Yeah.
because something urgent has come up at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this goes back, and I wrote it down to do in the wrap up after we finish the call, but I'll say it now. Is I often say, and Rachel, you said this, like everything that's important has time. And I've said this for years and still say this at Humans Connecting, is that there is always time for who and what is important.
Yep.
And if there's no time for that, well, then you're prioritizing things that aren't important. And that can be an uncomfortable truth. But there's always going to be the thing. It's like, oh, something busy has come up at work, and there's a phone call. The boss needs this, or I need this, and I'm the boss. It's
Mm,
never a good look for the boss to go out for a coffee or whatever.
mm,
But what's the consequence?
mm.
What's the consequence? And really, you're not that important. The world will still keep on turning on its axis for an hour, or for an evening, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you're not that important. Um, so, Rachel, outstanding advice.
Mm.
I have simply loved this conversation.
Thank you. Likewise.
And I mean, you've just said that you're not on social media, but how can people, if people, have questions, or they want to send fan mail, they want to nominate you for another leadership award, you know, um,
Send them my way. No, so
how can they go your way? How
look,
can they find you?
LinkedIn is a great way that I do connect with a lot of people. And it was funny. I actually got on LinkedIn because work made me. But I have met so many amazing connections through that, like yourself as well. So you do get to meet incredible people. And I do make it again, coming back to making that an important part of what I do. I love connecting with people. That is part of who I am. So if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is a great opportunity, or my email and phone number and everything's on there as well. So I'm big about, when these conversations happen to keep that conversation going. So,
Yeah.
if there's somebody out there that finds something from it, as you said, wants to ask a question or go, hey, I'm going through this, what do you think? I'm always want my door to be open to have people to come and connect with me and have that discussion, because I think that's really important, because I think sometimes we listen to these things but we don't do anything about it. Take that next step forward and do something about it, and take some action out of that, whether it's going and asking for advice, or going to find a new connection, or going to do something that you would never have ever done before. Make that change. And so my door is always open for anyone who wants to come and connect with me.
Is a brilliant way to wrap it up. Now, we've received the wisdom, we've had this amazing conversation. Now it's time to actually do something with it.
Mm.
Rachel Cook, thank you for what you do, but most importantly, thank you for how you choose to do it. Because sometimes we don't get a choice in what we do, but we always get a choice in how we do it.
Mm. Yeah.
And the world is richer because of the choices that you make.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. I, again, coming back to the getting out of the bed in the morning and putting the 2 feet to the side of the bed, I'm very proud of what I do, and the organization that I'm a part of, and the person that I've become. And that's something to say. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. And a big shout out to the Inclusee team. Keep doing what you're doing. You're amazing.
They are
So,
amazing.
Rachel Cook, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Humans Connecting podcast.
Thank you so much, Phil, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. What an amazing conversation. And thank you for all that you are doing as well. So keep on connecting.
An absolute privilege. I'll see you next time. Just come back to a couple of really important nuggets of wisdom that that Rachel shared with us, and it was particularly in and around that, how do you stay connected to yourself question. And there was something in there that Rachel said, and I really think it has resonance for you. And that is about, if tonight is my very last night, can I sit with the understanding, with the knowledge that I have done my best today? And it's really powerful, because I don't know if you are also into classic Stoic philosophy like me, but when it comes to leadership, it can actually be a really helpful, offer a helpful set of principles. With that very basic tenet, you cannot control circumstances, but you can always control your words, thoughts, and actions in response to those. And there's a Latin phrase, memento mori, which is remember that we die, remember you die. And my Latin is a bit rusty about, which is the subject, but remember that we die. And that can seem quite morbid, but it also is, for me at least, and I wonder if this is for you, and it feels like it was for Rachel too, there's a certain freedom in that. This all ends. And how we live the dash between our birth date and the date of our death, there's a whole lot of stuff that we get to choose doing. And one day, it's going to be the day of our death. And can we meet that knowing that in our workplace, in what we choose to do and how we are choosing to contribute, how we choose to lead other humans, can we say that we have done our best? And our best there, we can hold ourselves in terms of the best there to impossibly high standards. I know I do. I have when I've been in leadership positions, holding myself to impossibly high standards that I wouldn't expect anybody else to live up to, but I would be crushed if I didn't live up to them each and every day. And there's a certain amount of grace in what I'm about to offer you. And that was in alignment with what Rachel said about values. And values offer us each individually our own signposts. When we're lost and a bit confused, when we're facing a dilemma that we've not experienced before, values are often not often, they're almost always a great place to come back to and reflect on in that way. If you're looking out at the Brisbane River, if you're sitting looking at a tree, or if you're journaling or doing whatever, rigorously applying your values, living your values can often, almost always, offer a way forward when there are leadership dilemmas and when there are dilemmas within ourselves. And that helps us, helps me, helps Rachel, and I'm going to say it helps you, stay in alignment with who you are. So wrapping this up, we humans notice when there is a difference between what is said and what is done. And in workplaces, in leaders, where there is a gap between what is said and what is done, we stop paying attention to what is said and we pay attention to what is done. And when there is a gap between what is said and what is done, we can check out. And the people that we lead go, okay, you're talking a lot, but you're not actually doing this. And slowly but surely that trust erodes, the Christmas presents of socks with your face on them, they start to not happen. And I said this to Rachel as we were finishing up and we ended the call after pressing stop on the recording. And it's like, we can pay attention. We know, not pay attention, but we know when someone is talking from their head, what they know, what they've learned about leadership, about how things need to be, how we respond to things, how we, navigate our way through the workday or the work year or whatever it is. But we also pay more attention. We pay more attention to when it comes from the heart. When what we're saying, we actually have lived it. We are living it ourselves. And so that's a gift there for you as you reflect on this episode and how our values can actually be, are our powerful ally in navigating leadership, in navigating life, but leadership at work as well. How values bring us back continually to connection with ourselves. How values and rigorously applying our values, living our values, mean that we are devoting time and space to who and what is important. There's so many things in this episode. It was so just chock full of wisdom. They're the things that I wrote down that I really wanted to come back to you and sort of sit with you for just a moment and offer those to you. Memento mori. They're like, live your values. And there is always space and time for who and what is important. And if there's not time for that, well, then you're prioritizing the wrong thing. It's an invitation to come back to yourself, to be yourself. And then when you are yourself, leadership kind of just naturally happens. That's my experience anyway. What did you get out of it? Let me know. Let us know here at the Humans Connecting podcast. And be sure to check our website, humansconnecting.org, for details about how we help you, your workplace, and communities thrive through loneliness, create a sense of belonging, which we do through our creating connected workplaces service. And all of our products and services, our creating it's been a long episode and I'm starting to run out of words, but our Connection Starter course, our Creating Connected Workplace service, all of these are ways, products and services that we help your workplace become connected so all the humans within it thrive, and yourself included, because you're connected and you feel that you belong. Finally, we are here to make a positive social impact as a social enterprise. So if you're a business and are looking for ways to support humans to feel more connected, and you also want to make a positive social impact, check the link in the episode description and book a call to have a chat with us. And, we could talk about how you could advertise on on future episodes of the podcast, or collaborating with us in other ways. We're completely open to having conversations with you if you also want to have that positive social impact for other humans. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me and Rachel and the Humans Connecting team. It is always a privilege. There's just so much in there that I know that will really sit with you and support you as you become a connected human and a connected leader. I simply cannot wait to see you in the next episode. I'm really excited to see you then. And until then, take care, and I'll see you later.